What's up, and welcome to the first video of 2022. We are talking about the Galaxy S21 FE, or Fan Edition, and I have really liked the Fan Edition phone since we reviewed the first one, the Galaxy S20 FE, like a year and a half ago. And overall, the recipe for the FE line of phones is pretty simple. You take last year's flagship phone and you keep what's really good about it, but you try to reconstruct it in a slightly cheaper package. So if a flagship phone is too expensive, but you still want a lot of those flagship features, you can go for the FE line. And what it ends up leading to is honestly a really solid phone, if not a phone that is maybe a little boring-ish. Like there's no risk here. This is a really good but unexciting phone. So let's talk about the S21 FE because I do really enjoy it. When it comes to how the phone is built, it'll be familiar but also somewhat different. So the back of the phone is made out of a polycarbonate plastic, but if you remember, the regular S21 was also made out of a polycarbonate plastic. The design also looks really similar. There is one big difference though. Both the S21 FE and the regular S21 have an aluminum enclosure, but on the regular S21, that aluminum enclosure extends to the camera housing. So you have a camera housing made out of aluminum and the rest of the back panel is plastic. On the FE, it's just all plastic. So the enclosure runs all around and it still has that slightly raised camera bump on the back, but it's all plastic this time around. And it is the type of plastic that if you apply some decent pressure on the back of it, you can feel it recess into the actual phone. Honestly, for someone like myself that will sit here and try to dissect a phone for you who's watching the video, that's something that you'll notice. But for the majority of the people who are going to buy a phone like this, you're probably going to put a skin on it and maybe even put it inside of a case. So I don't think the fact that the back of it is entirely made out of plastic is going to be a big deal for a lot of folks who are going to buy this phone. And you also have a lot of other flagship features here like wireless charging, reverse wireless charging, and you get an IP68 water and dust resistance rating. So it's familiar, but also different. I also really like the display, but I mean, at this point, are you surprised by the fact that Samsung makes really good displays? Because I'm not, and the S21 FE is no exception. The display on this phone is actually really good, especially given the price point. It's essentially identical to what you would find on the Galaxy S21. So we're looking at a 1080p resolution, and it's dimensionally 1080p or 1080 by 2400, sorry. And you're still getting a lot of the awesome, let's call them flagship features of a smartphone display. 120 hertz refresh rate, which is amazing. And in terms of the quality of the 1080p panel itself, it's one of those where you really got to get up close and look at it to actually identify that it's 1080p. It gets plenty bright, especially given, again, its price range. And in terms of the material, it's Gorilla Glass Victus. Now, one other thing to keep in mind is that you still do have an in-display fingerprint reader, but it's slightly different. So on the S21, we had the ultrasonic fingerprint sensor. On the S21 FE, it's going to be optical. When you place your finger on it, you can literally see the phone shining the light. Although you get that same similar wave animation to make you feel like it's the ultrasonic. And it is, at least in my usage, plenty fast and plenty accurate. I happen to like it quite a bit. And it's got really similar placement to the regular S21. So again, it's kind of striking that tone of a really familiar display, but slightly different. And as far as sizing goes, you actually get a bump in this category. 6.4 on the S21 FE versus 6.2 on the regular S21. But Samsung did a really good job of building this display into a compact phone. So I never felt like the display was too big. And for one-handed use, it's plenty comfortable. So in the display category, Samsung gets an A, but I mean, Samsung always gets an A. So we're not really surprised by this, right? As far as performance goes, you are dealing with 2021 flagship levels of performance, which is really nice to see. So internally, you're looking at the Snapdragon 888 and 6 gigs of RAM. Now, the amount of RAM you get is going to depend on which storage option you end up going with if you buy this phone. So if you opt for 128 like I did in this olive color, you're going to get 6 gigs of RAM paired to the Snapdragon 888. If you decide to pay a little extra and go for 256, you're going to get 8 gigs of RAM. So I would potentially consider that storage and RAM bump if you feel like you're going to be a power user with this device. So it's nice to see that that option is there. And As far as actual performance goes, I mean, the phone can handle anything you throw at it, and it's going to do it in nice fashion too, because everything it does has that buttery 120 hertz refresh rate. So performance is really solid. And another good part about this phone is with the Snapdragon 888, you're still going to go a whole day in terms of battery life, because you do see a bump in battery capacity. 4,000 on the regular S21 and 4,500 on the S21 FE. So I had no problems getting to at least one full day's worth of usage. And whenever you need to top up, you can do, I believe, 15-watt wireless charging. There's obviously fast charging available whenever it comes to cable charging. And I mean, you got so much battery capacity here that Samsung does offer reverse wireless charging if you need to charge, like, I don't know, a pair of headphones or something. So performance and battery life are really solid. Now, as far as cameras go, when we get to this part of the review, we typically will just jump straight to the back of the phone and talk about the main camera setup, because normally selfie cameras are just kind of, I mean, I don't take a lot of selfies, look at me, right? So it's like either that or selfie cameras are typically just like not worth mentioning, kind of like webcams and laptops these days. But on the S21 FE, it's actually worth mentioning because there's a decent upgrade here from the regular S21. So you have a 32 megapixel selfie camera on the front of this phone that surprisingly takes very sharp selfie photos. So if you're someone who values your selfie game, this phone has you covered. And as far as the triple camera array on the back, you're looking at a 12 megapixel wide angle, 12 megapixel ultra wide angle, and an 8 megapixel telephoto. So let's start with the quality of the photos first. Then we'll talk about what this camera system is missing compared to the S21, and ultimately what that's going to mean for you. So as far as camera quality goes, the photos are good. I mean, they're perfectly acceptable for a phone at this price range, and they're going to be plenty detailed, plenty sharp. The colors are going to be super saturated and vibrant. It's got your typical Samsung post-photo reproduction, so colors are going to look like you want to print them out and put them on a frame more so than they are color accurate. But again, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Take photos on this phone, they're going to be really pleasing to look at. Now, as far as video capabilities, you've got 4K 3060, 1080p, 3060, 240, 720p at like 960. So you have a pretty full-featured video recording capability on this camera array as well. Now, as far as what you're missing from the regular S21, the S21 has that 64 megapixel telephoto that's going to give you that 30 times space zoom. And the S21 is also capable of 8K video at 24 frames per second. But quite honestly, I don't know how many people are going to miss out on 30 times space zoom unless you're kind of weird. And as far as 8K video goes, I don't see too many people really clinging to that as the reason why they would want to buy an S21. So as far as the camera system goes, it's plenty capable. It's good. And that's it. That's essentially the Galaxy S21 FE. I really like this phone. I mean, this is a very safe bet from Samsung. There's not really too much where you can look at this and kind of just be like, no, I don't like that particular feature of the phone. But I will say, in terms of its price and also when it was launched, it's a little awkward. I'm not really sure why Samsung decided to launch this in January. I would have preferred to see this phone launch maybe Q3 or Q4 of 2021. I feel like it would have made a little more sense. Maybe launch it alongside the Flip and the Fold to just introduce more of a budget-friendly option at the time. But we're like a month away, maybe, from the entire S22 range coming out. So I don't really know who is going to ultimately go for this smartphone, especially when you consider for $100 more, you can just buy the regular S21, which is arguably a better phone, or you can just wait for the S22s to come out. Or in this price range, you're competing with other phones like an iPhone SE if you want something from Apple, or the Google Pixel 6, which is $100 cheaper than this, and depending on how you look at it, is arguably a better phone for some people. But as far as what you get with this device, Snapdragon 888, IP68 water and dust resistance rating, solid cameras, Android 12 out of the box, an incredible display, 120 hertz. I mean, you're getting a really solid package here. It's just brought out at a little bit of an awkward time. So I don't know. I mean, if you absolutely have to have a phone from Samsung, but you don't want to pay those flagship prices, this is going to be a great buy. You won't be disappointed if you buy it, but consider your options, because at this price range, the smartphone segment is getting really, really good, and this phone has some really stiff competition. So consider your options. If you enjoyed the video, hit that subscribe button for me, maybe, please, thank you. As always, thank you so much for watching. Stay safe. I'll catch you in the next video. Peace. What's up? And welcome to the first video of 2022. Messed up already, bro.
That quick, bro.